I'm going to jump right into that point you just mentioned, Paul, around ROI, cost justification, and expectations. We're running short on time here, and I've got a bit more to ask the audience, so I want to jump right into shifting gears and talking about results and expectations. So it's a two-part question. What results are you seeing, and how are you attempting to measure the return on your investment? Are you seeing ROI, and how are you measuring that? And it's interesting, the how are you measuring question came up a few times in our registration polling. So at the registration stage, our audience could had the opportunity to ask questions, and we saw that a few times. So I think it's an important question to address. Paul, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, happy to. So yes is the short answer. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about the integration elements because we're more CMO based. But we've recently installed ERP, so I'll put that in the bucket of process automation. And of course, in a growing company, we've grown north of 50% each of the last 3 years. There's significantly more sort of activity that's going on a day-by-day basis now, and that's even with an ERP system being active. So there's a good amount of activity that is in process, and we are seeing the results because we need to hire fewer people. We need we have better visibility and better ability to manage some of those processes. So I think that's one of the important aspects is the justification should be around what the future, as we've said earlier, what the future state will look like, and really try to map that out as opposed to, well, here's how I do it today without that automations. Because again, none of us are sort of planning to have companies that aren't growing and aren't successful, right? We all want to make sure that we move forward, and I think this automation question is a key part of that future.
Yep. Okay. Devin, let me kick it over to you. Results Sutro is seeing and how you're measuring the return on your automation investment.
So the first thing starts with the first time, making sure that batch is successful. So we've seen increase in success rate year over year, which basically increases your capacity in terms of what you can do with the plant itself, which leads to not just success rate, but also better understanding of your process and also increasing yield, a lot more that you expected than what you expected when you designed the process earlier. So I think those are the 3 or 4 components that we see. Cycle time improvement between turnaround time, between campaigns and runs, et cetera, the things we measure operationally, the KPI to make sure that we are turning things around faster, not just compromising compliance and all that, but also making sure that we are producing stuff as we go along.
Yep. Randy, same question to you.
Yeah, well, I think both these guys really covered everything. I think about it in 3 ways: turnaround times, right first time, execution, and cost of goods. And that really is where the rubber meets the road at the end of the day, because we are in business to make money or conserve the resources we have, right? I have to share just a quick aside. A number of years ago, I had a CEO at a former company challenge me. He goes, "Wow, you're always talking about how quality is free," because I used to be a quality VP back in the day. And he said, "It looks to me like you're investing several $1 million in quality." And I said, "Well, quality is free. It's failure that's expensive." And he never challenged me again. And as it turned out, it's right. You really do have to take the long view, because there is an investment, but you need to be prepared to show that ROI, because if you don't, you're going to have people challenge you. So
yeah. And I suppose the answer would depend, but it sort of follow up to that. It is an investment. Is there an appropriate time to make that investment? And I know it's a difficult question to answer because it's dependent on so many things. But if you think about it strictly in the I guess context of company maturity continuum, maybe clinical stage, maybe development stage, is there a generally appropriate time you see to begin making investments in automation?
I think you invest when it makes sense for the business and when you can. To that point, the investment in automation, if you're an early phase company just going into the clinic, maybe more into investing in automation to transfer necessary data seamlessly and accurately, to support submissions and INDs and that type of thing. Whereas if you're a company that has proof of concept and you're starting a pivotal trial, or you're getting ready to launch a product, right? Then that investment is driven by a very different need, and that's really around optimizing cost of goods, ensuring that you're able to get your launch quantities at the time that you need to support the launch. So that's sort of, so I don't think there's one answer to that. I think it really does depend on the situation at your company.
Yeah. Let's turn the final question over to our audience, final polling question. And this question is around your current plans for bioprocessing, automation, and control. Where are you at now? Are you continuing to watch for new solutions? Are you including more sensors in your process? Exploring historian-level solutions now? Developing a long-term plan, including manufacturing execution systems? Waiting until your drug advances further, or do you have no plans? And while our audience is responding to that question, I'm going to turn it back to the panel, ask a related question of the panel. What next steps are you anticipating taking on the automation journey? Let's start with Devin. What's the next step at Sutro?
I think the next step is really what I would call control charting. So really understanding, getting the data trending. Now that we have enough history for all the different products, how do we pull that data, do some trending analysis, and really, what is our process telling us now? Where else do we need to improve? And so based on that data is where we'll start making the investments within the operation.
Okay. Randy, any thoughts on your end over at Kyowa Kirin? Sorry, iBio. Yeah, Randy, tell me what's going on at Paul's company.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I think probably the next step in the journey, as I mentioned earlier, we've invested in what I would call somewhat islands of automation a little bit, in terms of QMS, in terms of the ERP and that type of thing. So I think really the next steps will be around looking at how do we integrate this data effectively to turn a lot of disparate, in some ways, data into useful information to make business decisions. So I think that's probably the next step.
Yep. Okay. Paul, now we'll get to you at Kyowa Kirin. What's going on over there? Do you have next steps? I guess I would ask the question of you on two fronts. One, internal. You mentioned, I think, an ERP internally. And to whatever degree you have control or influence of the automation journey with your CDMOs, what do next steps look like there as well?
I think it's mostly in the vein that Randy just started with, which is integration. So I would say that in the internally based processes, we're doing sort of next steps or 2.0 types of implementations to just sort of capitalize on in some cases technology is upgraded and we need to upgrade our systems to deal with that. But then more equally, as opposed to this supplier, that supplier, the other supplier, and then we integrate the data manually. Obviously, we're working on some different things to take advantage of internal system work. And process improvements, whether it be ERP or internal automation, EQMS, some of the things that the other guys have talked about. But then on top of that, integrating our suppliers and distributors as well, such that we can actually see what's going on and better visibility. So I think integration is the way that I would summarize it, and that's really for our next. I think in this space in 3-year windows. So that's really what we're talking about there.
Sure. Okay. Terrific. All right. Let's take a look at those polling results. Hurdles. No, I'm sorry. Current plans. Current plans for bioprocessing automation. Continue to watch for new solutions. So kind of wait and see. Develop a long-term plan, including MES, and explore historian-level solutions now. So that would indicate to me, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but that would indicate to me that we're looking, there's sort of a lot of early stage kind of thought processes and tire kicking going on. Any reflection on that, Paul, from your side?
No, I mean, I think this is probably, this is, we've been saying for an hour that it depends, and everybody's on maybe a bit of a different journey. And this probably shows that, right? In terms of what we're expecting from a next steps perspective for the audience.